What is going on, everybody? Thank you so much for watching this program. My name is Matt Faircloth, and if you guys were waiting for this, thank you. If you guys were scheduled and had this in your calendar, thank you. I'm grateful you guys are here. Today is Monday, and every Monday at noon Eastern Standard Time, I'll be joining you guys live for interviews and conversations, talking all real estate stuff, talking to BiggerPockets contributors, BiggerPockets authors, BiggerPockets folks that you guys know and love. We're bringing here onto this show Mondays at noon. And I want to thank you guys for watching. So, by the way, if you guys are watching right now, I want you guys to do me a favor. Thank me for what I'm doing here, and thank BiggerPockets by giving this thing in this show on your social media handle that you guys are watching on Facebook, on YouTube, wherever you guys are watching. Give it a big thumbs up, right? Because what that does is it tells Facebook and YouTube and those social media channels, hey, Facebook, I like this. And that means that you, Facebook, should show it to more people. And that's what it will do. The more folks that like this, the more people that become aware of this program and aware of BiggerPockets and aware of the awesome real estate knowledge that we're offering up for free with a capital F here. So thank you, Angela. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Gail. You guys are awesome. So everybody give this thing a big lots of likes. Now, next thing, I want to give you guys some shout outs. Latia, you're welcome. I want to give you guys some shout outs. If you guys are watching right now, do me a favor. Take your fingers through and let them do the walking on your keyboard and tell me where you're from. I got Nancy from Florida. I got Luis from the Bronx. What's up, man? I've got Ale. Let's see. Gregory, all you folks are here watching. Can you speak a little on multifamily house hacking? I love it, Gregory. You better believe it, man. We'll talk about that. And I've got the guest to talk about multifamily today. So keep shouting out where you guys are from. I'm going to give a few more here. I got Sandy, blessings from Poplar, California. Bless you too, buddy. And I got Jorge from California. I got Latia from Philly. Stay safe down there in Philly, Latia. I got Jiang from Philadelphia. Let's see, Chattanooga. Hello, handsome. Thank you. You made my morning. You've made my morning from Durham, North Carolina, Crean. Thank you. Made me blush a little bit. Look at me. Okay, let's see. I got Carlton. I got Chris. I got Ale. I got Angela. Man, look at this. Look at this. You guys are blowing up. I'm so grateful to have you guys here with me. I need to bring in my guest because my guest is incredible, and she is going to blow our minds today talking about multifamily today. One more, Jerry Mills, my friend, my personal friend from the Bluegrasses of Kentucky. Welcome, man. I'm so grateful to see you. Every time I see your name, it makes me grateful to see you here. So, oh wait, I got Khan from Dubai, overseas. Here you go. Overseas high five right there. Now, I'm going to keep giving shout outs on locations once we get our guest in here, and you guys keep talking about you're from. I've got somebody I know named Elizabeth Faircloth says Ashley Wilson is a rock star. So I want to tell you guys a little bit about my guest before I bring her on because she's modest and she's not going to brag on herself like this. This person is a multifamily whiz, and it's not just multifamily. Ashley Wilson understands multifamily. She understands renovating. She has a generational understanding of construction of property, and she's brought that into some phenomenal fix and flips that she's done. And today she's going to talk to us about multifamily, and more importantly, multifamily in today's marketplace. Because multifamily before COVID is an interesting conversation, but that's all hindsight, just historical looking behind. We want to talk about how to do multifamily deals today. How do you manage multifamily deals today? How do you find multifamily deals today? Should we all just be sitting on our hands and not finding deals and not looking? Well, I'll tell you what, Ashley Wilson has deals and she's doing deals now. I cannot wait to bring her on. So right now, I want you guys to give a great round of applause and a big thumbs up and lots of hearts for my guest today, Ashley Wilson. Bring her on. Welcome in, Ashley.
Thank you so much for having me, Matt.
Man, Facebook and YouTube, they must have known you were going to be here today because Facebook and YouTube are blowing up today. And I got somebody that said, hello, handsome, and they made me blush and threw me off my game. So, yeah, so thanks. Awesome. Welcome. Ashley, you were on the, for those of you guys that don't know Ashley, listen to BiggerPockets podcast number 277, or read one of the many, many articles that Ashley has written for BiggerPockets. She is a phenomenal giver to BiggerPockets. She's given a lot of her time and her wisdom for free to BiggerPockets.com. And we're so grateful to have you as one of BiggerPockets contributors. And I personally have learned a ton from you as well as a friend and as a colleague and everything like that. So thank you for taking your time to spend here with us.
Absolutely. And thank you to BiggerPockets also for giving me the opportunity. And I'm just happy to be able to reciprocate all of the wealth that BiggerPockets has given to me.
Awesome. So for those that are not privileged to know you, and that can you give our audience like a 30-second intro? Just tell us a bit about your background, and a bit about anything that you think that they should know, and a bit about your awesomeness. Okay, and you've got lots of hi Ashleys coming all the way up and down the feed, man. You've got your fans are here, so go for it.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining the call today. To give a brief background about myself, I am a daughter of a general contractor, which sparked my interest in construction. My mother was in project management, so I've married the two, to be honest with you, throughout my career in real estate. I've been in real estate for the past 10 years. I've done everything from Airbnb, short-term rentals, long-term rentals, house hacking, flipping, and most recently in the past 3 years, I've gotten into multifamily. So I really am very passionate about real estate. I love giving back to the community by sharing information about real estate. So anything I can do to share my wisdom and help people along their journey, I am more than happy to do so.
Awesome. And you're being humble. I've seen some of Ashley's work that she's broadcast on Facebook for the reno work that she's done. I mean, she is a recreator of space. And I've also seen you in action on multifamily. So your knowledge of construction and knowledge of projects, and also I'll say this, knowledge of what needs to get done before what. Because when you look at a multifamily, it's like, well, we've got this work to do. We got to do roofs. We got to do unit turns. We got to do leasing office upgrades, whatever it is. One of my compliments to you has been that your knowledge of what needs to happen before what, and developing a project timeline, I think is something that I've been impressed with in the past, and what you've done currently in your current projects and what you and I've discussed doing in the future. So, so that's something that I think is a art in that, because a lot of people look at it and like, well, there's all this money we have to spend, all this work we have to do. But there is an art in understanding what has to happen for what before others. Now they can read your articles and listen to your podcast to hear more on that from you. Man, okay. I had a few shout outs here, man. You got Angela. Hi, Ashley. I got Verna. Hi, hello, all from Memphis, Tennessee. Welcome. I got Laura. Thank you, Ashley. I got CV. Thank you, Ashley. So again, and Micmac says hi, Ashley, on YouTube. Welcome, Micmac. So here's the deal. I want to ask. I got a few questions for myself, and I think that I think the audience would benefit from this. To talk a bit about where we are right now. We're in the middle of COVID, a pandemic, and it's changed the world. Literally, it's changed everything. And I think that we have to acknowledge those changes, and then there's a big so now what that we have to do in moving forward, right? So in the world of multifamily, there's pre-COVID world, and just not even worth talking about. So now we're post-COVID. Talk to me. We're going to talk about managing deals in the full cycle of multifamily. The first step is obviously finding deals. Now, there are people out there that are just sitting on their hands that are waiting for things to, air quote, go back to normal. Maybe that's not going to happen or whatnot, but it's maybe better to get out there and find deals now. So is it possible to find deals now? And if so, how's it done?
Great question. I think a lot of people right now are probably sitting on the sidelines, and I don't know if that's necessarily the best action to take at this point. I think there's a lot of things that you can do right now that you're still considered, quote unquote, sitting on the sidelines, but you're actively sitting on the sidelines. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is you're still engaging with brokers. You're still reaching out to direct to sellers. You really want to show that you're in it for the long haul, that you weren't only on the upswing in multifamily during this past run up that we've had over the past, 12 years. You really want to show that you have financial backing, because a lot of brokers will think if they were questioning you before and they didn't know whether or not you had the ability to close, and all of a sudden COVID comes, they may, parlay that into you might not have the financial backing to get a deal done. Ultimately, when deals start to emerge, it's going to go first to the people who've continued those conversations with brokers, as opposed to the people who stopped talking to brokers and stopped reaching out to them. It is a communication and a relationship business. And the second that you stop communicating in this space is the second that you are no longer actively involved. And the only way you're going to get deals in multifamily is through active engagement with brokers and direct to sellers, property management companies. I mean, there's a lot of different strategies on how you can find deals, but you need to continue that active engagement, because how do you know when the perfect opportunity comes along if you aren't still pursuing it? So it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be purchasing it at the rate that you would have purchased at pre-COVID. There's definitely going to be a discount varying by market, depending on the impact of COVID within that particular market. However, you really need to stay actively engaged. I can't stress that enough. I think I've said it maybe 6 or 7 times in 3 sentences. So hopefully everyone listening takes away that you need to remain active.
It's great. So call those brokers, make sure that they know that you're still buying, that you're still looking, you're still active. And I've found that you've got to handle them with kid gloves sometimes in ways to make sure they understand that you're not looking for pre-COVID prices, and that things that the world has changed, because not every broker or not every seller really is willing to fully acknowledge that the world has changed a good bit. And that leads me to my next question that I want to talk about with you when it comes to analysis, right? So let's say a broker does send you a deal, and I know you've got a deal that you're in the middle of, multiple deals that you're involved in as an owner, and deals that you're potentially buying down in Texas, right? So how does COVID change analysis of a multifamily asset? We all know there's pre-COVID analysis, but now that we're in the world we are now, how has this changed your analysis, and what tips can you offer us in the ways that we look at deals in the new world?
Absolutely. So in terms of analyzing any deal, what you're analyzing is perceived risk. So with COVID, there's an inherently stronger risk associated with acquisitions today than there ever was before. And what you need to look at is you need to break down the property and see where the risk lies. Does the risk lie with occupancy? Does the risk lie with your expenses? I mean, all multifamily comes down to 2 components, right? Your income and your expenses. How is COVID impacting your income, and how is it impacting your expenses? And ultimately, what you need to decide is, are you able to take on regular R&M cost? Let me backtrack. On the income side, it's very obvious. People are, not changing properties as often in terms of a tenant. They're not moving as frequently as they were before due to stay-at-home orders, due to a lot of different reasons. Maybe they financially can't afford to move now because there's a cost associated with moving. There's a whole host of reasons. But on the expense side, it might not seem as clear or as evident. On the expense side, however, you have a lot of deferred maintenance starting to pile up. R&M costs. So in terms of R&M for people who are outside of multifamily, I'm talking about repairs and maintenance. If you do not stay on top of R&M costs, repairs and maintenance, it can be very detrimental to a property. Let's say it's a small leak that turns into a massive undertaking. And I mean like a small leak turning into a little bit larger leak, turning into mold, turning into a full mold remediation. I mean, that can happen easily within a week. And if you're not entering a property because the tenant is too afraid to have a maintenance person enter the property, and a week goes by, or now, like, for example, the situation we're in, 2 months goes by, that unit could need a full mold remediation, and the person would rather deal with the mold than risk having someone come into their property, like a maintenance person or a contractor, to fix, a small leak. You don't know. There's crazier things have happened. So because of this perceived risk, you have to underwrite certain things. You have to underwrite decrease in occupancy. You have to underwrite increase in concessions, increase in loss to lease. You have to underwrite potentially increase in your R&M costs. There are just so many factors that you need to consider. And really, if you understand all the line items that go into your income and expenses, I would just start very elementary and go through line item by line item and ask whether or not COVID is directly or indirectly impacting this. And if the answer is yes, you need to account for it in your underwriting. And then that ultimately gets transferred over by the purchase price that you're able to offer.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that sometimes you got to throw a little bit of cold water on the broker and on the and on the seller, and that just to like, hey, listen, this is my post-COVID analysis. Tell us briefly, and if I can celebrate your awesomeness, you got a deal under contract down in Texas. That sounds like a phenomenal opportunity.
Thank you.
And you have a pre-COVID agreement with the seller, and then a post-COVID agreement with the seller. Talk us through briefly how you were able to navigate that conversation without them walking. I mean, they were willing to reduce their price. How did that go? Give us some tips for those watching that maybe are working on small deals, big deals, whatever it is. What are some tips you can give us to bridge that conversation and get to a win-win agreement with the seller moving forward?
This ultimately comes down to how someone negotiates and the tactic that someone takes. My tactic on negotiation is honesty, because to me, I can argue very strongly if I'm being honest. I don't have to watch what I'm saying. I believe in what I'm saying. I'm already convinced in what I'm saying. I don't have to remember that I'm, trying to tell a lie to get a purchase price at a certain rate.
Right.
So ultimately, I was very fortunate because prior to going into real estate, I worked in pharmaceuticals and I worked in clinical research and development. And I actually worked on the GlaxoSmithKline vaccine division that was manufacturing one of only 2 vaccines for the last pandemic we had with swine flu. So I am very well versed in the entire process. And when I saw that COVID-19 was coming to the US and circulating and the whole process that we were going to have to go under, I knew early on, probably more so than most real estate investors, I'm guessing, in February, that there was a potential for these stay-at-home orders, for all of these different challenges that eventually came to fruition. So during the conversation, when we were in best and final with the broker, I brought this up to the broker at the very beginning of March, and may have even been the end of February. And I said, in terms of feasibility, we are not going to be able to come to the property, have our contractors walk, due diligence per the bank's requirements. I mean, there's just a whole host of things that were not feasible to do. And to be honest with you, the broker laughed. The broker thought it was overreacting. And
this is just the flu, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And ultimately what ended up happening is a week and a half later, he called me back, apologized, and said that the seller actually respected me more because I confronted the situation in advance with solutions offered to them. So I said from the very beginning, we're not going to be able to do this. So let's write in like a COVID, now everyone's calling it COVID addendum, like some sort of language should we have challenges when it comes to exercising the full due diligence process in the contract that it's already outlined. And because I took that approach from the very beginning, the seller was just very thankful and ultimately respected me for doing that. So the broker then, circling back to the communication, the broker and I continued to stay in communication throughout this entire process, checking in, and we were looking for a few key indicators on when we were ready to pull the trigger to make a new offer and do a new reassessment. And that obviously was recently. And because of the foundation and the relationship we had established early on, I think that's what made negotiating the contract right now an easier process.
Mm-hmm. I agree. To highlight a few things, I love what you said about honesty, because I've been negotiated with people that you can tell are using air quote tactics or things they read in books and stuff like that to, they're using strategies to negotiate, which you can kind of smell that if you've been around for a little bit. And there's always a bit of inauthenticity in using a negotiation strategy, let's say, right? What Ashley's talking about is just using honesty, just being, listen, I'm not sure if my rent numbers are going to perform the way that I thought they were going to pre-COVID, and I'm not sure if my expenses are going to stay the same. And so I need to bake in a little bit of conservatism. And I think that honesty goes a lot further than people give it credit for. That you don't need to play games, just be 100% honest with people. And sometimes that may require a little bit of, people telling people what they don't want to hear. But that's what true honesty is, whether not trying to shelter something, just telling them straight up, I can't do it for this, but I can do it for that. That's just being honest, right? Some questions here from the audience. Abels wants to know if you're willing to disclose price and location for your deal. Let's celebrate what you got there, or if you're fully under contract, are you able to share?
I am not fully under contract.
Okay.
It's around 150 units, and it's in Houston, Texas. That's all I feel comfortable saying right now.
That's great. That's great. Yes, Houston, Texas, north, plus or minus between 100 and 200 units. That's awesome. So congrats on that. So let's see. I've got a few other ones here. What I wanted to jump back to, because I love these types of questions, and I know you will too. Eldashawn is watching from YouTube. Thank you for watching. I have a special heart for those on YouTube. So Eldashawn wants to know, what are some things I need to do at 17 years old? I love questions like this, Ashley, because I wish I was thinking about real estate investing at 17 years old. So if you're talking Eldashawn's a 17-year-old here, Ashley, watching. So what is any advice you would give to someone who's not just under the age of 18, but just start looking at real estate early, whether anybody watching that's, say, in your early 20s or in your teens and you want to get into this business? What's some advice you have, Ashley?
There's two ways you learn in real estate. One is by paying for it, and the second is by doing it. So what I would suggest to you, Eldashawn, because you're only 17 years old, is I would not pay for it. I would try to partner with someone that you can gain experience and knowledge from. And a lot of people, younger people, especially who have approached me and asked me, how can I partner with you? They're very committed early on, but longevity, they tend to tail off very, very quickly. I think if you are fully committed and you put in the time, energy, and effort into showing your level of commitment consistently, that is the key word, is being consistent, then you will be leaps and bounds above where Matt and I are today, probably at half the amount of time. So partnering is a really sure way, as long as you're partnering with the right people, to go really far, really fast. But ultimately, you need to really stay committed throughout the entire process.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And Eldashawn, I just acknowledge you for being even curious about this business at your age. So I think it's awesome. My recommendation to you is just be patient. Learn, network, and offer up your willingness to do to folks that have been around for a little bit longer in exchange for taking you under their wing and mentoring you. And I think you'll be super successful. And I can't wait to hear what happens. I want to hear what happens to Eldashawn at 17 years old, looking to get into real estate. I want to see where you're at 25. So congrats. Brandy wanted to know, this is an interesting question. Brandy coming in from Harlem, New York City. Welcome, Brandy, coming in on YouTube. If you haven't answered this already, how much did you put down? Did you put down 20% or less? Is it a flip? I'll take a little bit of this, and then I'll let Ashley jump in too. Ashley and I rely to do big deals. Ashley and I do well, but on both of the different projects that we work on, but we also don't write checks for our properties ourselves. We rely on passive investors. And as you do larger deals, there becomes more and more room for passive investors to work with us on big projects. And that's what my book, Raising Private Capital, that, you guys can check out by going to biggerpockets.com/store. You can pick up a copy of that. What Raising Private Capital talks about is how, Brandy, people with money that are maybe sick and tired of Wall Street, or maybe just want to diversify, want to put it somewhere else, and are more than willing to consider doing deals with someone who either has a track record or contacts or resources or whatever it may be. And so get your head out of thinking about how much money you have to lay down and start thinking about, I call it the who, not how, right? So it's not how am I going to get it done? Who do I need to help me get this done? And so there are plenty of folks that have money in their retirement accounts, money in cash, don't realize that they might own their home free and clear, and they can put the equity in their home into real estate as either a loan or equity as well. And Raising Private Capital talks about exactly how to do that. Ashley, you want to add something about either working with investors or how we as investors are able to fund larger deals where we might not be able to write, checks ourselves for these types of deals? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that also within Matt's book, there's a direct quote speaking to 30% of homeowners own their home free and clear that Matt cites. So within Matt's book of Raising Private Capital, there's a lot of different strategies. That book is jam-packed full of great tips for, I mean, I read it on vacation. I enjoyed it so much, to be honest with you. So that's how much I'm passionate about real estate.
Awesome.
But awesome. So I would definitely echo everything that Matt just said. Ultimately, the ability to do larger deals, the advantage to doing larger deals is this idea of leverage. And you want to leverage as many components as you possibly can. So you want to leverage people, resources, and equity. And what Matt and I do is we leverage equity. So by bringing passive investors on, we can stretch our dollar and we can stretch other people's dollar further by going after these larger deals when we collectively come together. But I highly recommend Matt's book, and I wouldn't say, I'm not just saying that just because, you know, I'm on here with Matt. It's an incredible book, and anyone who is in real estate, period. It's not if you actually want to raise private capital, because to be honest with you, that's not my forte, but it's something you need to be cognizant of. So I highly recommend everyone read this book.
Thank you. That's very, very, very sweet of you. And Brandy, please check it out. I think that it'll open up your mind to what's possible in real estate, that you can play a lot bigger if you can expand your network. So this is just a shout out, not even a question, just a shout out to you, Ashley. Verna on Facebook just wanted to say, I'll get it on the screen here. Ashley is really smart. This is great info. Just a big thumbs up to you, Ashley. So
thank you so much.
Yeah. Just folks are just soaking this up. There she is. Ashley, yeah, just a fan. There you go. So Poe wanted to know, Poe on Facebook, should I purchase now or wait to see if the market tanks in the next 6 months? Now, I have my own thoughts on this. I know a mutual friend of ours who's been on this show too, Jay Scott, has his thoughts on this too. What are your thoughts? Now, obviously, I know what you think because you're buying deals right now, right? So what would you say to Poe's question?
It depends on two factors. One is the asset class and two is the market. So I think depending on what you're going after, do I think you should buy maybe a hotel right now? I don't know if maybe that's the best idea. But if you're getting an incredible deal, I mean, who knows? You're going to know your market and your asset class in terms of what is a good rate in which to acquire something way better than I will. I know my markets and I know my asset classes very well, but I can't ever say to someone, I get questions sent to me all the time. Can you analyze this deal for me and tell me whether it's a good buy or not? I can't answer that question for you. I really can't. I can tell you how to analyze. I just can't tell you if it is a good deal or not. So ultimately, really knowing the market, how the market has been impacted, what the horizon is for that specific market as it concerns the asset class you're seeking.
Absolutely. So that's great. And Poe, I think that I would find good deals that make sense now. That's my 2 cents. I personally don't believe the market's going to crash. My crystal ball is broken. I can't seem to get it fixed. And the conversations that I've had with people like Jay Scott that I highly respect, and I think is, just to be straight, just people that are way smarter than me, that do a lot more research than I do on these kinds of things, believe that this is not a real estate related crash. This is a income related crash of the world. The global financial system is coming to a halt, which has stopped income from injecting itself into the economy, which is way different than what we saw in 2008, 2009, which was a debt crisis, which caused a big crash in real estate. So this is not going to, today's market, this COVID thing, this recession that we're going into is not going to look anything like what 2008, 2009. And I think that those that are waiting for 2008, 2009 to happen again may be disappointed. So I think just find deals that work today. And I think that you'll do well as long as you don't bank on things like appreciation. And as Ashley said, bake in the COVID risk and bake in a recession level risk into your analysis, and you're going to be okay. More. Okay. Gregory has asked this question twice. And so I got to give him a shout out here. So Gregory asked it right at the beginning. Like it was like, like second question. And when people were doing their introductions and shout outs, and before I even brought you onto the show, Gregory wants to talk about, can you talk about house hacking multifamily? So I think that we'll put an asterisk in there that, Gregory, I don't know anyone that's house hacked anything big. But before I even go there, for those of you guys that are watching that don't know what a house hack is, I'll define it quickly. A house hack is living in a rental property. And there's a great book by Craig Krulop on the house hack, which you guys can get at biggerpockets.com/store, right there next to my book. You can get that book too. Great book. We got to get Craig on the show too to talk more about house hack, because house hack's changed a lot. The strategy has, and has become a lot more prevalent, I think, in today's marketplace. But Ashley, thoughts on house hacking? I don't know if that's something in a way that you got started. I got started house hacking as my first rental property, but thoughts on it from what you've seen and ways to make it work today.
I have been house hacking for the past 10 years. In fact, I just recently stopped house hacking. Yes. So the way you defined house hacking, I think, is the most well-known way to define house hacking. But another way in which you can define house hacking is that you can have a residential property and rent out one of your rooms within your house to also be considered under the umbrella of house hacking. So the way in which I've used house hacking falls on that latter definition. And I have done that through dating my now husband, being engaged, married, kids. I mean, literally almost our entire relationship, we have house hacked, short of the past 3 weeks, because my brother and his wife just moved out of our house. So in terms of house hacking on the multifamily side, I do not have experience on house hacking multifamily. I only have experience on house hacking on single family. But I don't want to speak out of turn because I don't have firsthand experience, but to my understanding, it is very comparable, except what you're doing is you're actually living within one unit, and whether it's a duplex, triplex, quad, and so on, you're leasing out the rest of the units in hopes to cover your expenses, right? So in my particular situation, I've house hacked on multiple levels. I've house hacked where someone was covering my expenses. I've house hacked where I've actually made a profit. And then most recently with my brother and his wife, we actually traded labor because my brother is a general contractor and he is very handy. And I moved into a full gut renovation, which is crazy in its own story in itself, because I have 2 young kids and, living with my brother and his wife in a full gut renovation, my brother, instead of paying rent, traded his time that I otherwise would have had to pay for a contractor.
That's awesome.
When we did the math, we made out tenfolds of what he would have paid in rent, just because of everything he did to our house. But ultimately, it is a fantastic strategy to get into real estate. And it lends itself really well. Everyone I know who started out house hacking multifamily, they were able to duplicate the process very quickly. So it is definitely a faster way in which you can get into real estate.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know a lot of people that have done it. And the only thing I'll add to that is that, Gregory, you can get access to, and I see in a later comment, you said that you want to look at a 3 to 4 unit. Totally fine to do that. As Ashley said, you can live in a 3 unit. You can live in unit 1, rent out unit 2 and 3 to folks. And I have a friend who lives in New Jersey. He bought a 3 family. Him and his wife were smart. They moved into the studio. Right. And there was also a 2-bedroom, 1 bath and a 1-bedroom, 1 bath. Right. And those were much larger units in the studio. But him and his wife, no kids, moved into the studio apartment, the lesser of all the units. And they own a 3 family. He laid 3% down to buy this property, and he's living there and making $800 a month. Right. God bless. I mean, it's about as good as it gets. So it is possible, Gregory, if you play your cards right, you buy in the right market. to either drastically reduce your personal living expenses. My first house hack was I was living in a house, a single family home for free because I rented out the other 2 bedrooms. And this is before marriage. So, so I get that. And Ashley had family living with her. So that's totally fine to do, with husband and kids. But if you have a small family, consider buying a multifamily, like a duplex, triplex, or a quad. And at the least, you will reduce your living expenses. At the most, you'll lay very little money down and control a small multifamily asset, which could be your very first segue into real estate investing. I tell everyone I talk to that wants to get into the game of multifamily or into real estate investing that your first move should always be a house hack. It sounds like it was Ashley's first move.
Yes.
It was mine too. And it allowed me to wet my beak and to learn a little bit about real estate investing in a safe environment and live with people I like and trust. I mean, I live with, my friends. You live with a family as well. So it's a great way to segue in. And it's just a win-win, so awesome. We've got Abels, who had asked a question before, wanted to jump in for a follow-up. Y'all briefly mentioned project timeline schedule, for example. Abels, I know you're from the South because you said y'all. I say that too. And Ashley invests in the South, so she can say y'all too. But so y'all briefly mentioned projects timeline schedule, for example, prioritizing which items to be addressing after taking over the property. What is your general plan that you follow based on previous acquisitions? So, Ashley, I'll summarize it here. Do you have a model? And this takes us into the operation side of owning multifamily. Do you have a model that you use on a regular basis that's like a do this, then that type of thing that has worked pre-COVID, that maybe works COVID now, that you use when you acquire multi and you start taking over management?
So what's interesting is on the single family side, because I also have a single family business, I have a very straightforward model. It is this, then this, then that, there's a very strict order of operations. On the multifamily side, it's a little bit different. And I think it's because multifamily, at least in terms of the acquisitions that I pursue, there are multiple buildings. So the process it's not always in sequential order across the entire project. So I'll give it an example. Let's say you have a 24 building property, which is something I have. And one of those buildings has a roof leak. And then there's a few other issues too, like it's causing the drywall to have issues on the second floor because the water's seeping through the roof. And then you have, this issue there. And then on the adjacent building, the roof is not, it's not an issue, but let's say there's a plumbing issue, which is causing the drywall to have the same type of issue that we're seeing on the first building that I gave it as an example. I would not hold off doing drywall repair and fixing the source of the problem when I'm at the drywall stage of the first building. I would probably tackle them in parallel. I would tackle the roof and the plumbing repair at the same time at 2 different buildings, and then tackle the drywall repair sequentially. And they might not coincide in time. It might take longer for us to do the roof repair, maybe because the permit process is longer. Who knows? Bad weather. There's a whole host of reasons there. But ultimately, there's an order of operations within construction, and you have to think on 2 different levels. You have to think about it in terms of the actual building and the impact that the problem has, or even just if it's cosmetic and the order of operations there. But you also have to think about it too in terms of a cost perspective, because it is definitely more efficient. And whenever you hear the word more efficient, that translates into less costly to have things done together collectively. So it's less costly to have your drywall folks do everything all at once instead of come one week and do drywall in this building and 1 week in another building, because they have to set up and move and all these things, in terms of administrative type tasks they have to accomplish. So it's not as straightforward, at least I find, on the multifamily side. You have to weigh this situation and really understand all the nuances. But on single family, it is very straightforward.
That's great. And I agree. And I think on multifamily, what we found works and what I've seen you do too is that you go after, like some people call it the low hanging fruit. Like it's like super obvious that, you know, I've got major leagues, I've got this, I've got that. But you also go after low hanging fruit that's going to put money back in your pocket. So if you notice that you've got a 24 unit property and they're all 3.5 gallon toilets, right? Okay, I know that I have a very good ROI for replacing those to 1.2s. If that's what I choose to do, that I can do that very quickly, probably knock that out. It's not that big of a deal to buy and swap out a toilet. And I'll see immediate savings on water consumptions if I'm paying the water bill. Things like LED lighting, those are easy to do. And then obviously as units start to turn, you can start investing in turns and things like that. But I tend to go after, and I know you do too, after what they call the low-hanging fruit. Maybe, yeah, all your roofs need to replace, but unless you've got a major leak, that might be the first thing you do, because a roof replacement's not going to put any money in your pocket directly. I would go after the money first, and then do the deferred maintenance stuff that's going to cost you probably bigger checks and that are just more of a stabilization play, but aren't necessarily going to pay you anything. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It really, you have to think about the business on the single side of things. You're not really thinking about the business in terms of the renovation process, because it's not directly correlated in terms of what you just said, Matt, like what you're targeting to repair in the order in which the returns are coming in. They're not the same. So I like to think of multifamily as a combination of real estate investing and investing in a business, because ultimately that's what you're doing. It's two different things that you're investing in, as opposed to on the single family side, it's really just real estate investing.
Mm-hmm. It is. And it's you've got to fit the plan to the property. And I think that not every plan works for every property, but if you look at the deal and you look at your path, you just look at your what your path to profit on a deal is, the plan will start to become evident. So few more questions we got here. We've got a bunch. You guys, I mean, just Facebook and YouTube are blowing up and it's great. I'm loving this. Arthur had a question. What are the finance strategies for a single person, no partners, no raising capital, to buy a large commercial multifamily apartments, 60 unit that needs rehab? And that, so it looks like, Arthur, you're looking to self-fund it. So what are your advice? So Arthur's looking to skip over the raising capital fund side of it, which is great. Actually, I know you said you've got a 24 unit. So what are some advice you might have for Arthur for finding a small multi like that?
Yeah, just to clarify, 24 building, that property is actually 225 units, but
okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you got 24
that's why
rooftops.
I was saying like 24 roofs, yeah.
Yeah, you got 24 rooftops, got it. 24 foundations, right,
yeah.
right. Okay, so but what are some advice for Arthur for looking for small multi?
Yeah, for Arthur, for your question, so what I think the best strategy here would be seller financing. So if you do not want to raise capital, if you do not want to even put your own capital in, and you want to get into this space, especially like 16 units that need rehab, what I would recommend is seeing about seller financing and then seeing about whether or not you can get a construction line in conjunction to handle the rehab. I can tell you right now, for everyone who's listening, and this is across multiple markets. This is not just limited to Texas or Pennsylvania, which is where I'm from. The 16 unit, anywhere from like 50 units or so to 20 units, around that space, are becoming available like wildfire. A lot of people who currently own these size properties want out for a whole host of reasons. A good friend of mine is a lawyer for multiple banks, one of the top law firms in the country that handles all the foreclosures. And she said that the volume of foreclosures that they're getting on this size property it's kind of becoming a little bit alarming to them, of all the foreclosures that are going into place. So in terms of opportunity to enter that space, if you're looking for those, what I would consider, it's all relative, but what I would consider like mid-size apartment sizes, I think we're all going to see an abundance of these become available very quickly. So
Mhm.
before that happens, I would jump in and see if there's any way you could have a seller financing or take over the mortgage, or just try to get very creative. Matt's book obviously talks about different strategies you can deploy. Another book that has some great ideas too is Crushing It by Brian Murray. And they also talk about some financing strategies on the commercial side that you could deploy here. But ultimately, if you're not looking to do a raise, no partners, and you don't want to put your own capital in, this is, unless Matt, you can think of another strategy, this is really the only strategy I can think of.
Well, yeah, and I would say that maybe you need some short-term capital, but if the property needs work, bear in mind that David Green's book on the BRRRR strategy, lots of R's in there. So that book, the concept of buying something discounted that needs a lot of work, that's distressed, and then resolving that distress and adding value is a great game, and it also works on mid-sized multi, because remember, just because if I put $1 in renovations into a property, the likelihood of the property going up by more than $1 is pretty good if I play the game the right way. If I do things that Ashley and I have talked about really doing things that increase the revenue that a property makes. Because what's great about rental properties is they're not so much evaluated based on what other things around them are selling for. They're based on how much money they make. And they're based on that through the application of a cap rate, which does look at the market that they're in. But if I can make a property make more money on their bottom line, I can make the property worth more. So you can take that 16 unit and get in with short-term capital, whether it's small enough that you could probably bring in a hard money lender that's going to cost you, a lot of interest, but at least you get the deal done. So maybe a hard money lender, maybe some of your own capital, and maybe some private money. You said you don't want to raise, but consider doing it as debt, not equity. Maybe just borrowing money from people, and then add your value, make it run like a top, and increase your bottom line on the property, and you can refi out into very solid long-term debt. So I would, and I promise you, I'm not just here to just plug lots of BiggerPockets books, but it just seems to be coming up in the conversation. So yet another BiggerPockets book to check out would be David Green's book on the BRRRR strategy, which you can again pick up at biggerpockets.com/store, where you can get my book, David Green's book, and Craig Krulop's book on house hacking, which Ashley and I have mentioned all today. So cool. So listen, we got to wrap it up, but I've got some super exciting news for you guys. So those of you guys that love what Ashley Wilson has to share, she's a wealth of knowledge on flips and on multifamily and on business strategy and on all things real estate. Ashley, you've got some great news. So these folks can get a little bit more of what you have to say coming up next week, right? So tell us more about what they've got in store with you.
Absolutely. So starting June 9th, I'm very excited to announce
Awesome.
that I will be hosting our own series of following us through the acquisition of our multifamily property that we currently have under contract that I've been talking about today.
Awesome.
We are also going to cover things, for example, like how to select a market, how to talk to brokers, how to source properties, how to do underwriting, as well as the due diligence process and acquisition and operations. We are going to cover soup to nuts on multifamily, and we are going to use video content from walking our properties so you can see the whole process and you can learn and understand alongside of us as we do this transaction. So I'm really excited. Tune in on June 9th, which is next Tuesday at 7 p.m.
That's awesome. And is it going to be every week on that Tuesday, or
every week?
Awesome.
Correct. Yes.
Listen, guys, this is amazing. There is something to theory that you can get out of books and things like that, in the theory of real estate investing, but there is nothing like watching the hands-on application of somebody who talked their way through a deal. We did a program on BiggerPockets as a YouTube page called Fair and Square, which is just analysis of running one of our multifamily assets. There's a lot of day-to-day stuff that you see in us dealing with contractors, and Ashley's kind enough to open up her doors and to show you guys inside in the acquisition of a multifamily asset on how she found it. It was the deal we talked about before. This is the deal in the Houston region that you spoke of earlier. So those of you guys that are asking about that deal, you're going to get to see the day-to-day. What better way to learn about you guys doing multifamily projects, whether it's a 16 unit or a 200 unit, right? What better way than to see someone who's going through it right now, right? It's one thing to read a book about it or to take a course for $5,000, run to the back of the room, but why not just do it right here? Because you can do it for free, and have Ashley Wilson, out of her generosity, teach you guys what she's going through in a day-to-day basis and expose you guys, show you through her handy dandy cell phone. She's going to give you guys video tours of her property and everything like that. You cannot miss it. That is Tuesday, June 9th at 9 p.m. Eastern. Did I get that right?
7 p.m.
Okay. Tuesday, June 9th at 7 p.m. Eastern. Be there or be square. I will be there. And then I'll be watching either the live sessions or the video because I can't wait to see what she's got in store for us. So, Ashley, I got great news. It's good. It's bad news so much for those watching, but great news for our conversation today. There are so many people that have asked questions on YouTube and on Facebook. Our feed is blowing up, and we're winding up here, so we're not gonna have time to get to it. Will you do these folks that incredible favor of going back and in an hour or two? Would you be willing to go in and just, if you've got some time, to just type in some answers to folks' questions that have just blown up this feed and asked all these questions on YouTube and on Facebook, to give a little slice of your knowledge? Would you be so kind as to just type in some answers on Facebook, on the
Absolutely.
BiggerPockets Facebook and YouTube page? Awesome. Guys, keep the questions coming. Ashley's going to be super kind with her knowledge and wisdom and give you guys a little bit more what she has to say. So if your question did not get answered, fret not. Ashley's going to get in here and with her fingers do the walking and type in some of her answers to your thoughts on Facebook and on the YouTube feed. And I cannot thank you guys enough for your time today. Be sure to tune in next Monday at noon Eastern, because it'll either be my wife Liz with the Women's Corner, which you guys know, which Ashley is a member of as well, the Real Estate Invest Her community that she's been phenomenal running. And she'll also be bringing some of that knowledge of bringing about wealth for women in today's world here to the BiggerPockets feed. So I'm super excited to have either Liz here next week or myself, and I'll be interviewing one of the other great BiggerPockets contributors here for you guys. So Ashley, before we go, if folks don't get you on the Facebook or YouTube feed, how do people get a hold of you to get more, to hear anything that they need to, any reason why folks want to reach out? How do people get a hold of you?
You can follow me on Instagram at badashinvestor. And also all of our real estate companies are at badashinvestor.com. And you can link from there to our flipping company, our multifamily company, and everything in between. So please feel free to reach out to me. I'm more active, or most active, on Instagram. So if you have any questions, you can message me there as well.
Awesome. Ashley, thank you. I know you're busy. I know you've got everything much. It sounds like you've got, lots of great things going on. So I really acknowledge you for taking your time and spending with us today at the BiggerPockets audience to share some of your wisdom. I cannot thank you enough for your time. And we hope to have you back on as another guest if you're willing.
Absolutely.
Sometime
anytime
soon to come join us again. So thank you guys for watching. Be sure to join me or Liz next week at noon Eastern, and I will see you guys then. Ashley, thanks. We'll hopefully have you on again soon.
Thank you again. Thank you.